Things just got messy between former Real Housewives of Atlanta star Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker in their divorce. Todd just objected to Kandi's request to have this divorce sealed, but not only that, it was just a couple of days ago that Kandi revealed in court that she pays for basically everything, and she wants the court to come up with a temporary schedule for their two minors.
What looked calm on the surface was never actually calm, because when a divorce needs to be sealed, rushed, and tightly controlled, it usually means the story underneath is already spiraling. According to court filings, the split between Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker didn't just quietly fall apart, it fractured in ways neither side is willing to ignore anymore. What was once presented as amicable co-parenting has now shifted into something far more complicated, far more contested, and far more public. On one side, there's an urgent push to keep the details out of public view. On the other, a firm resistance, grounded in the argument that court records are meant to be seen, not hidden. And when those two positions collide, it forces one uncomfortable question to the surface. What exactly is at stake if everything becomes public? Because this isn't just about a marriage ending. It's about money. It's about control. It's about parenting time. And it's about competing narratives that no longer line up. Court documents now describe a situation where responsibility, access, and authority are all being questioned at the same time. Social media tells one story. Legal filings tell another. And somewhere between luxury trips, present parent, optics, and emergency motions filed behind the scenes, the gap between appearance and reality keeps widening. What makes this case different is not the divorce itself. It's the timing, the urgency, and the insistence that the court step in before things escalate further. Temporary schedules, financial claims, alleged interference. None of these are language used when everything is fine. And if this is what's already visible at the beginning of the year, it raises a far more unsettling possibility. The mess hasn't peaked yet. It's just starting to surface.
So, the divorce between Kandi and Todd, although when Kandi talks about this on Amazon, which is important to note because this comes up in the recent update in this case, she basically was saying it seemed like things were very amicable between the two. We saw pictures of them celebrating the holidays together. As you know, Kandi is on Broadway in New York City, and the kids, she revealed on Amazon Live, were going to come spend the holidays with her in New York. We saw photos of them celebrating the holidays together, both Kandi and Todd. So we're thinking everything is copacetic, everything is good. Well, the court docs say otherwise.
What's unfolding between Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker no longer resembles a quiet celebrity separation. According to court filings, what began as an apparently amicable split has now escalated into a layered legal conflict, one that blends finances, parenting, public image, and control over narrative. At the center of the dispute is a fundamental disagreement about visibility. Kandi Burruss allegedly moved to have the divorce proceedings sealed, citing privacy and the protection of minor children. On paper, that request appears routine. In practice, it triggered the opposite reaction. Todd Tucker reportedly objected, arguing that Georgia law presumes court records to be public and that no sufficient justification had been presented to treat this case differently. That resistance matters. Because when one party pushes for privacy and the other insists on transparency, it suggests that the stakes extend beyond emotional closure. It implies leverage. And leverage in divorce litigation is rarely accidental. According to emergency motions filed with the court, Kandi claims she has been left covering the entirety of expenses for their two minor children, Ace and Blaze. School tuition, medical bills, daily necessities, travel, vacations, all allegedly paid by her, despite assertions that Todd has multiple income streams of his own. These claims mark a sharp departure from earlier public statements that suggested cooperative co-parenting and mutual responsibility. What complicates the picture further is the contrast between legal allegations and public presentation. Social media posts paint one image. Court documents describe another. And that gap between what is shown and what is filed is where scrutiny intensifies. Kandi's filings reportedly allege that Todd has cultivated a present parent persona online, frequently posting short videos that frame him as actively involved. Yet those same filings assert that he has not consistently exercised his scheduled parenting time. The implication is not merely absence, but performance, visibility without follow-through. That accusation strikes at the heart of credibility. Because in custody-adjacent disputes, consistency matters more than optics. And when filings begin to question whether public behavior aligns with private responsibility, the court is forced to look beyond appearances. According to the motion, this tension came to a head during the recent holiday period. Kandi had publicly stated on her Amazon Live sessions that the children would be spending the holidays with her in New York, where she is currently performing on Broadway. Travel arrangements had allegedly been secured in advance. Notice had reportedly been provided. Yet the filings claim there was an attempt to block that travel, effectively interfering with her parenting time. This is the point where the narrative shifts from financial disagreement to alleged obstruction. And obstruction, even temporarily, is what often prompts courts to intervene quickly.
The motion alleges that Todd's daddy daycare persona on social media is a facade.
Lies! The lie!
Okay? Claiming that he has not been showing up for his scheduled parenting time.
That line, brief but pointed, captures the core tension now defining this case. Because if true, it reframes the conflict entirely. It suggests that the issue is not access, but accountability. Not opportunity, but execution. In response, Kandi has requested that the court impose a temporary parenting plan. Not a suggestion. Not a negotiated agreement. But a court-ordered schedule that both parties must follow. Requests like this typically emerge when informal coordination breaks down or when trust between parties collapses under pressure. The motion reportedly asks the court to establish clear parenting time, holiday rotations, and academic break schedules, specifically referencing upcoming spring break plans that had already been arranged. This level of specificity indicates urgency. It signals concern that without formal structure, future disruptions may occur. Meanwhile, Todd's objection to sealing the case adds another layer. In his response, he reportedly asserts that Kandi has been the only party discussing the divorce publicly, through print, televised, and online platforms, while he has refrained from direct commentary. From that perspective, sealing the case could be seen as inconsistent with the reality that the story is already public. That argument raises an uncomfortable question. If the details are already circulating, who benefits most from limiting access to official records? And why now? Divorces involving significant assets often hinge on timing. On what becomes public first, on which narrative sets the tone, and on whether documentation confirms or contradicts what audiences believe. According to filings, Kandi has remained focused on work and family obligations, while alleging that Todd has taken multiple overseas vacations during the early stages of the divorce. The contrast drawn is deliberate. It frames one party as burdened with responsibility, the other as detached from consequence. Layered onto this is the shadow presence of extended family dynamics. Social media users have pointed out appearances by Mama Joyce, whose long-standing tensions with Todd have been well documented over the years. While no formal allegations hinge on her involvement, her visibility has fueled speculation, and speculation, in high-profile divorces, spreads faster than fact. The cumulative effect of these filings is clear. What once appeared amicable is now being litigated line by line. Parenting time, financial responsibility, public image, control of information. Each issue feeds the next. And perhaps most telling is the timing. Emergency motions are not filed casually. They are filed when a party believes delay could cause harm, financial, emotional, or logistical. The fact that the court has reportedly already addressed at least part of these issues suggests that the situation has moved beyond negotiation. If this is what has surfaced at the beginning of the year, it raises a critical possibility. Additional filings may follow. More documents. More contradictions. More public reaction. Because once a divorce reaches this stage, where court orders are requested, objections are filed, and narratives diverge sharply, it rarely de-escalates quietly. And for Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker, the question is no longer whether the divorce is messy. It's how much more is still waiting to come out. By the time the emergency motion reached the court, the dispute had already moved beyond finances and optics. What surfaced next was something more volatile: control over access, and the power to decide where the children would be and when. According to the filings, the conflict intensified during the Christmas holiday period. Publicly, the situation appeared settled. Kandi Burruss had stated that the children would spend the holidays with her in New York, where she was actively performing on Broadway. Travel plans were discussed openly. Dates were mentioned. The expectation was clear. Privately, the filings suggest a very different sequence of events. Court documents allege that despite advance notice and prepaid travel arrangements, there was an attempt to prevent the children from traveling. Not a scheduling disagreement. Not a last-minute miscommunication. But an alleged effort to block the trip altogether. That allegation matters because it reframes the entire dispute. This is no longer about who pays for what. It's about who decides and whether one parent can unilaterally disrupt agreed-upon parenting time. In custody-adjacent conflicts, holidays are pressure points. They expose unresolved power struggles faster than any other period. And according to the motion, that pressure cracked whatever informal understanding previously existed between the parties. The filing reportedly states that court intervention became essential to ensure consistent and peaceful parenting time while the divorce is pending. That language is deliberate. It signals concern that without judicial oversight, interference could continue. What makes this especially significant is the timing. The divorce had not been pending for long, yet the alleged escalation occurred quickly, suggesting that the breakdown wasn't gradual. It was sudden. According to the motion, Kandi had already secured travel itineraries for future academic breaks, including spring break. The request to the court wasn't speculative. It was preventative. A move to lock in certainty before the next disruption. And when requests become preventative, it implies that trust has already collapsed.
So since the petitioner filed her petition for divorce, the respondent, which is Todd Tucker, has intentionally and willfully attempted to interfere with the petitioner's parenting time with the minor children, specifically during the recent Christmas holiday break. So remember, she went on her Amazon Live talking about how the kids were going to be spending the holidays with her. She also talked about how she would love to have a divorce this Christmas. When people ask about the one thing that she wants for Christmas, she says, a divorce. So the respondent attempted to prohibit the children from traveling to New York to visit the petitioner, even though she had previously incurred costs of travel for the children and provided the respondent with significant notice of her intent to exercise parenting time during the children's designated holiday break.
That statement, formal, precise, and recorded, changes the gravity of the case. Because once alleged interference enters the record, the court's role shifts from mediator to enforcer. And that's exactly what the filing requests next. According to the documents, Kandi is asking the court to establish a temporary parenting plan. Not a suggestion, a directive. One that outlines scheduled parenting time, holiday splits, and academic breaks, removing discretion from either party. This is the legal equivalent of drawing hard lines. At the same time, Todd's position introduces a parallel conflict: public narrative control. In his objection to sealing the case, he reportedly argues that Kandi has spoken extensively about the divorce across multiple media platforms, while he has refrained from direct public commentary. From that standpoint, sealing the records could be framed as selective privacy, public when beneficial, private when inconvenient. But that argument also raises another question. If one party believes the public narrative is incomplete or misleading, why resist sealing at all? Why not allow the court to handle the matter quietly? The answer may lie in leverage. Public records create pressure. They anchor claims. And they make reversals harder. According to the filings, Georgia law presumes court records to be public. Todd's objection reportedly leans on that presumption, asserting that no exceptional circumstances justify sealing this case beyond the standard concern for minor children. Yet the concern for children cuts both ways. If the filings are accurate, then ambiguity around parenting time, especially during major holidays, creates instability. And instability is precisely what courts seek to eliminate. What complicates matters further is the contrast between alleged behavior and digital presentation. Social media continues to show moments of presence, smiles, and carefully framed clips. But the filings suggest a different rhythm: missed schedules, delayed responses, and disputed access. This disconnect is where public perception and legal reality collide. Observers have noted that luxury travel posts and overseas vacations appear alongside claims of financial strain shouldered by one parent. Again, these are allegations, not findings, but they form a pattern that the court cannot ignore if substantiated. And then there's the unspoken undercurrent: extended family dynamics. While not central to the legal arguments, the visible presence of Mama Joyce has fueled online speculation. Long-standing tensions resurface in moments like this, amplifying emotional pressure even when they remain outside formal pleadings. By this stage, the divorce has clearly crossed a threshold. Emergency motions, objections, allegations of interference, requests for structured enforcement. These are not the markers of a quiet separation. They are signs of a case accelerating toward judicial control, where flexibility gives way to orders and narratives are tested against records. According to updates referenced in the filings, the court has already begun addressing parts of these issues, with hearings reportedly scheduled or held to consider temporary child support and parenting time. Even without full transcripts, that development alone signals seriousness. Because once the court steps in, the timeline tightens. Decisions are made faster. And future filings often reveal more than the parties initially intended. If this part exposed the financial and public image fractures, a dispute over access, authority, and the right to decide what normal looks like for two children caught between competing claims. And if this level of conflict emerged this early, one conclusion becomes difficult to ignore. This case is not stabilizing. It's escalating. By the time the objection to sealing the case was filed, the divorce had already crossed into a different arena, one where law and narrative collide. Because sealing a case isn't just a procedural request. It's a declaration about who gets to control the story. According to the objection, Todd Tucker argues that Georgia law presumes court records are public and that Kandi Burruss failed to demonstrate why this divorce should be treated differently from any other. On its face, that argument sounds technical, neutral, even routine. But context changes everything. Because this is not a divorce unfolding quietly behind closed doors. It's one already being discussed across live streams, headlines, and social media threads. And once a case is public in practice, sealing it in theory becomes contentious. The objection reportedly points out that Kandi has discussed aspects of the divorce across multiple platforms, print, televised, and online, while Todd has refrained from direct public commentary. The implication is subtle but sharp. Privacy, selectively applied, becomes a strategy rather than a shield. That framing transforms the dispute. It's no longer just about protecting minors or limiting exposure. It becomes about who speaks first, who speaks most, and whose version becomes canon. In celebrity divorces, narrative control can be as valuable as any asset. Public perception influences everything from brand deals to reputational leverage. And once audiences choose a side, reversing that momentum is nearly impossible. The objection acknowledges the need to protect minor children. But it also asserts that the request to seal is overly broad, suggesting that transparency, not secrecy, is the default. And defaults matter in court. They set the tone. What makes this especially volatile is timing. The request to seal comes after emergency motions, after allegations of financial imbalance, after claims of parenting interference. In other words, after the most consequential accusations are already on record. At that point, sealing doesn't erase what's been filed. It only limits who can see it going forward. So the question becomes unavoidable. What changes if the records remain public, and conversely, who benefits if they don't? Observers have noted that sealing a case can slow the spread of details, buying time to recalibrate public messaging. Keeping it open does the opposite. It accelerates scrutiny and invites comparison between statements and filings. And this is where the narrative war intensifies. On one side, the filings paint a picture of responsibility, structure, and urgency, requests for temporary parenting plans, claims of financial burden, and concerns about interference. On the other, the objection reframes the issue as one of openness, consistency, and equal treatment under the law. Both positions can coexist legally, but publicly they clash. Because audiences don't parse motions the way courts do. They absorb themes, patterns, contradictions. And once the idea takes hold that there's a gap between public presentation and private conduct, speculation fills the silence. Social media has already amplified that gap. Clips are replayed. Posts are dissected. Timelines are compared. Luxury travel posts sit alongside claims of unpaid expenses. Present parent imagery is weighed against allegations of missed schedules. None of this has been adjudicated. None of it has been proven. But in the court of public opinion, allegations don't wait for verdicts. The presence of Mama Joyce in social media moments has added another layer to the discourse. While not formally implicated in the filings, her history and visibility have fueled online commentary, resurrecting old tensions and reframing current events through a familiar lens. This is how narratives metastasize. Not through evidence alone, but through memory. And while Todd's objection positions him as the quieter party, silence has its own consequences. In a vacuum, others speak. Interpretations harden. And the longer official records remain accessible, the more material exists for analysis, accurate or otherwise. What's striking is that both sides appear to be arguing about process, not outcomes. Sealing versus openness. Court-ordered schedules versus informal agreements. These are procedural battles that often precede more substantive ones. They set precedents. If the case remains public, future filings will be scrutinized instantly. Each motion becomes content. Each response, a headline. If sealed, the tempo changes, but the curiosity doesn't disappear. It just intensifies. And courts are aware of that dynamic. Judges weigh not only the letter of the law, but the practical effects of their decisions, especially when minor children are involved and public interest is high. According to updates referenced in the docket, hearings have already begun addressing temporary issues. That suggests the court is moving quickly, another sign that the matter has reached a critical phase. Once temporary orders are set, they often become de facto standards. And standards shape leverage, which brings the focus back to narrative. Because whoever aligns their public messaging with the court's interim decisions gains credibility. Whoever appears misaligned risks backlash. At this stage, the divorce is no longer contained within legal filings. It's become a live, unfolding story, one where each procedural step carries reputational weight. And that's why the objection to sealing matters so much. It's not just about access to records, it's about access to truth, context, and control. If everything remains open, inconsistencies can be challenged in real time. If it closes, questions linger unanswered, and unanswered questions rarely fade quietly. As this case moves forward, one thing is already clear: the battle isn't confined to the courtroom. It's playing out across screens, feeds, and comment sections, where perception often outruns proof. And when law and narrative collide, the fallout extends far beyond the final decree. Because in high-profile divorces like this, the end of the marriage is only one chapter. The real fight is over what the world believes happened, and who gets to decide that story. This is the moment where silence stops working. Because once filings turn into headlines and court language turns into public conversation, there's no rewinding the clock. What started as a private unraveling has now become a public reckoning, and every move from here forward will be watched, weighed, and remembered. The tragedy isn't just the marriage ending. It's the collapse of trust in real time. It's children caught between schedules that keep shifting. It's narratives competing louder than facts. And it's the realization that once a story breaks open like this, control slips through everyone's fingers. You don't file emergency motions when everything is fine. You don't fight over sealing records when there's nothing to hide. You don't argue over parenting time when communication is healthy. Those aren't signs of closure. They're warning flares. And the most dangerous part? This isn't even the end. Temporary orders lead to permanent consequences. Early filings shape later rulings. What's said now echoes later, whether anyone is ready for it or not. The public sees fragments. The court sees patterns. And somewhere between those two, the truth gets pulled in opposite directions. That's how stories like this turn explosive, because everyone thinks they understand it, but no one has the full picture yet. What happens next will decide more than custody schedules or financial responsibilities. It will decide credibility. It will decide who looks consistent when the dust settles. And it will decide whether the story fades quietly or detonates again. Because if this is what's already on the record, imagine what hasn't been filed yet. Drop your thoughts. Say what others are afraid to say. Pick apart the contradictions. Question the timelines. And pay attention to what happens next, because cases like this don't cool down on their own. They escalate. And once they do, there's no pretending this was ever just a simple divorce.